Everyone, and welcome to a Lemons Legacies Porch Talk. Tonight we're going to hear Whispers in the Sound of Silence, Pathways for African American Cemetery Dialogue in K-12 Classrooms. My name is Jody Allen, and I'm the director of the Lemon Project, A Journey of Reconciliation. Before we get started, I want to read two William and Mary statements. The first is a land acknowledgement statement. William and Mary acknowledges the indigenous peoples who are the original inhabitants of the lands our campus is on today: the Cherokees, Nottoway, Chickahominy, Eastern Chickahominy, Mattaponi, Monacan, Nansemond, Nottoway, Pamunkey, Potomac, Upper Mattaponi, and Rappahannock tribes, and pay our respects to their tribal members, past and present. Now, the statement on slavery and its legacies. The Board of Visitors acknowledges that William and Mary enslaved people, exploited them and their labor, and perpetuated the legacies of racial discrimination. The board profoundly regrets these activities, apologizes for them, expresses its deep appreciation for the contributions made by African and African American members of the community to the vitality of William and Mary, then, now, and for all time coming, and commits to continue our efforts to remedy the lingering effects of past injustices. And now I will turn the Zoom over to the presenters of our panel. Again, Whispers in the Sounds of Silence, Pathways for African American Cemetery Dialogue in K-12 Classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody, and good evening, everyone. We are so pleased to be able to spend this time with you, and we want to thank you for joining us tonight as we share and discuss pathways forward with difficult history connected to the topic of erased African American cemeteries and K-12 education. Before we get started, I would like to share a little bit of the historic context that is surrounding the work that we're doing down here in Tampa, Florida. In 2019, in the Tampa Bay area, we made national headlines after a local journalist exposed rediscovered African American cemeteries that had been erased from public view for development. And so Zion Cemetery was the oldest African American cemetery in Tampa, and had been rediscovered underneath an apartment complex that was known locally as Robles Park. But shortly afterwards, cemeteries were discovered in our area underneath a Major League Baseball field, the Tropicana Field, found underneath Interstate 275, underneath King High School, underneath Curtis Fundamental Elementary School, underneath an office building, underneath a horse ranch, found in suburban neighborhoods, underneath an Italian cemetery parking lot, and underneath MacDill Air Force Base. And this is just since 2019. So in 2021, the Florida legislature passed House Bill 37. And this was to establish an African American cemetery task force to further research the extent of erasures across the state of Florida and to try and establish recommendations for moving forward. And the task force estimated that there were approximately 3,000 African American cemeteries erased, destroyed, or missing across the state. And what's of importance to our conversation this evening is that the task force recommended the inclusion of African American cemeteries into K-12 education, which is, of course, what we'll be discussing this evening. So let me share my screen with you so that we can address some of our goals for our conversation this evening. Okay. Are we seeing what I'm seeing? Yes, Rita's telling me yes. Thank you, Rita. Okay. So let's take a look at some of our panel objectives and goals that we have for this evening, which is to really have an open conversation as a team highlighting challenges that we have faced working at the intersection of cemeteries, difficult history, African American history, anthropology, and K-12 education. Now, the project that we're presenting to you this evening is funded by House Bill 4815. And this House bill was passed in 2022, so just recently. And the project really focuses on preserving and protecting African American cemeteries, cemetery history, and community history through K-12 education. So we've approached this task through community-centered approaches as we engage in oral histories, the establishment of a memorialization program, the establishment of mobile museum exhibitions featuring the history and community connected with African American cemeteries, and the establishment of curricular materials for classroom use. And our hope is that this very frank conversation that we hope to have with you will help to create new questions and hopefully offer some food for thought for communities that are across the country also working to preserve and protect African American cemeteries and interest in including this important history into our education. So the conversation tonight will feature the cemetery sites where we engage, methodologies that we employ, and showcase how we can bridge anthropology, community, and curricular development. So I would like to have the panelists introduce themselves to you. They all come from very unique backgrounds and introduce the cemetery communities that they are working with. So if Dr. Armstrong, if you would like to go first.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Lisa Armstrong. I am the Director of Community Engagement with Special Angels Investment. I am an applied cultural anthropologist with a concentration in heritage studies and a master's in Africana studies. I lead the GAs in the field work part of the research and in the community engagement aspect part of it.
Thank you. And I am Dr. Shannon Peck-Bartle, and I focus a lot on curriculum and instructional design with secondary social studies education, specifically on difficult histories and vulnerable cultural landscapes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Chestnut. I'm the curriculum developer for Rose Hill Cemetery, or Rose Cemetery. Rose is in Tarpon Springs, Florida. It's a small community north of Tampa near the Gulf Coast. The earliest burials at Rose were estimated to be in the late 1800s, and families continue to bury their family members at the site, even though board members suspect that it is near capacity. Rose is the largest and oldest active African-American cemetery in Pinellas County. There are approximately 600 grave markers, though there are estimated to be over 1,000 burials, with several likely located underneath Jasmine Avenue and the park located next to Rose. Rose was previously a segregated part of Cicadia, a Greek cemetery. The paving of Jasmine Avenue officially separated the two cemeteries. I have worked with Rose Hill Cemetery Association, which is the board overseeing Rose Hill Cemetery, and I work directly with Katie Taylor, the president of the board, and Kathleen McFarland, the board's vice president.
Okay. Hello, my name is Cassidy Gomez. I am a graduate assistant at the University of South Florida and a fourth-year middle school social studies teacher. I work with Whispering Souls African American Cemetery, which is located in technically Clearwater, Florida. It's right on the border of Clearwater and Safety Harbor in Pinellas County. Whispering Souls is on a 3/4 acre lot in what is now a residential community. It is an inactive cemetery now. The last burial is believed to be In the early 1970s, the first burial was a 5-month-old named Samuel in 1896. There was a GPR survey conducted in 2018 that indicated there were at least 90 burials there. But many community members believe that there are more. And also when they conducted the GPR survey, there was still a lot of overgrowth. And now there are homes built on 3 sides of the modern border of the cemetery. So there is a lot of belief that there are more than the 90.
Hi, my name is Adam Tidd. I work primarily with Zion Cemetery. It's located in Tampa, Florida. It is believed to be Tampa, Florida's oldest African-American cemetery. Records indicate that there's at least upwards of 700 people buried there. The first burial taking place in 1901 and the last sometime around 1923. The cemetery itself is located under a housing development and private businesses in the area. I work with the fantastic Mr. Fred Hearns, who is the president of the Zion Cemetery Preservation and Maintenance Society.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So, Lisa, I would like to start with you, since you do have such a rich background in cultural anthropology, and you're coming to this project from a really interesting perspective as an anthropologist with really deep roots in that community-centered approach to education. So I was hoping that first you could please describe some of the anthropologic approaches that we are utilizing in this project, and how a community-centered approach can be useful for curriculum development.
Okay, thank you. Although this project is centered in education, it is ideal for applied anthropological, theoretical, and methodological approaches that have the potential to smoothly bridge discourse between academic and mainstream audiences around sensitive or contentious topics. So one goal of this project is to amplify community narratives about erased, rediscovered, and underserved African-American cemeteries in lesson plans and curriculum. Ethnographic approaches are known to do just that. So documenting the descendant stories provides students and the community has the potential to provide students and the community with insights of the nuances, social, cultural, and political factors that may explain some of the current conditions of these cemeteries, that may make some believe that the cemeteries were forgotten or neglected by African-American communities. And it also tells them about the processes and the fights to protect these sacred racially segregated spaces. In this project, we use collaborative ethnographic methodologies similar to those outlined in the book, The Other Side of Middletown, that focused on a specific African-American community in the Midwest. Collaborative ethnography, according to anthropologist Eric Lassiter, engages community participants more actively in every phase of research. So in essence, our assistants will speak to the community experts on more than one occasion and confirm with them that what they're seeing is what they hope to see, or they can tell us what they would like to talk about more than we could just offer them, to more than the questions that we might just present for them. I've used these approaches in my dissertation work that focuses on the heritage of historically racially segregated Black communities in Tampa, Florida. And with collaborative ethnography, community experts have a say in various parts of the research, including what parts of their stories are shared, and make suggestions about their expectations for lesson plans. We include a wide range of qualitative methods, such as participant observation at community-hosted events and workshops that we host, where often we get to hear the descendants express their concerns directly to politicians that may be in attendance. We also use field notes, audio and visually recorded short and in-depth ethnographic interviews. We conduct group interviews, and we also use public and private archival data. On top of that, we are partnered with several community organizations that work directly with the cemetery and with students whom we maintain contact with throughout the study, that help to clarify community history and nuances. And while I often lead the GAs in the qualitative research area and specialize in cultural components, curriculum and lesson plan design is Dr. Peck Bartle's specialization, and the GAs consistently seek her guidance in connecting the difficult histories to state standards in education, infusing community history into the classroom, and more. Dr. Peck Bartle, could you use some of the details of your inspirations, reasons, and visions to join anthropology in the K-12 classroom? And specifically, could you define or describe place-based learning as it connects with community-centered approaches to education?
Yeah, of course. You know, I when I first started teaching, and I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was, many, many moons ago, I was really actually completing my master's degree in anthropology at the University of South Florida. And so anthropology has always heavily influenced my teaching lens, right? And as a teacher, I was teaching mostly world history, human geography. And so I was engaging students with people and places and perspectives that really often, you know, challenged their own worldview. And when it came to conversations in the classroom surrounding race and ethnicity, students really struggled. And they struggled to articulate what these words and concepts meant to them. They struggled to understand how race and ethnicity could be understood in fluid and complex ways. And so although, you know, history and geography, it's race and ethnicity is integral to understanding those concepts, students really had no frame of reference to examine these constructs of race and ethnicity in any way that was meaningful. So fast forward to, you know, when I was working with students and I began working with Rose Cemetery and students back around 2018, anthropology really provided students a pathway to communicate effectively and to examine ways that race and ethnicity could be entangled, right, with place. And so our project really engages with Grunwald's critical pedagogy of place, which really is a pedagogical approach which centers entanglements with place to critically examine ways in which a place, such as a cemetery, reflects lived experiences and systemic injustices and influences our own understanding of experience and perspectives and very contemporary entanglements with oppressive power structures many times. And of course, you know, we extended that concept of place to incorporate communities that were associated with place. And so this was really kind of a hybrid approach of taking community and place-based learning and kind of hybriding these ideas together in a unique way. And I would say that, you know, a really unique feature of this particular project is its positionality in education. So in fact, as we have said, all three of our graduate students are coming from the College of Education at the University of South Florida. So I really want to make sure that our graduate students have the opportunity to share their working experience working at this intersection of, you know, anthropology, education, difficult history, and cemeteries. And I'm hoping that they're going to be able to share with you this evening some personal, community, and institutional challenges that the project and the graduate students have faced while they're working on this bill, House Bill 4815, the African American Cemetery Education Tampa Bay project, and as well to share, you know, some of the ways in which they have been able to overcome these challenges. So I'd like to have our graduate assistants share their experiences with this concept of community-centered curricular development. And if they can provide, you know, their unique perspectives, both as students of really community-centered and place-based curriculum development, but also as active K-12 teachers. So I'd like to turn it over to the GAs and give the GAs an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that they have faced, either personal challenges or challenges with the community, working with communities that they're not familiar with that type of work, or institutional challenges. Be brave. Any GA can go first.
Okay, I'll go.
There you go.
Okay. One of the greatest challenges for me has been navigating the various stakeholders involved in the cemetery. There seems to be a lot of disconnect between the board of Whispering Souls, who I work with fairly often, and the African American community within Safety Harbor. So while the board has been fairly hospitable to me and my presence and the work that I'm doing and that we're doing, I don't feel that I have yet found a way to familiarize myself with the African American community in Safety Harbor. What the board wants and what the community wants don't always seem to align. So my trouble has been navigating those dynamics between the various groups and ensuring that I do justice to the site and the community.
Thank you, Cassidy. What about you, Andrew? Because I know that you're also working with a very active board and a very active community over there in Tarpon Springs.
Yeah, so some challenges that, so as I would say, like as a high school social studies teacher and as a graduate student, like some of the personal challenges that I've had to try to overcome in this project, and is kind of give it the effort that it deserves while balancing the time that I have at school and at work. But as far as with the board, a challenge of this work is balancing kind of the personal lived experiences of the community members with the kind of academic analysis that is required in rigorous lesson plans that address the standards. Early on when I was writing my lesson plans, they were kind of dry, they were overly academic, and they didn't kind of capture the narratives of the community in an imaginative or compelling way. And over time, I realized that a mistake I was making was interjecting too much teacher-led discussion. For instance, I realized I needed to downplay the role of the teacher in the lesson design and emphasize the resources and community voices, especially amongst the really active board members.
Yeah. And, as we've discussed this concept of like co-creation, right, of lesson plans and curricular materials, which is something that you find in this community-centered approach, is different. This is a really different approach that our project is taking to try and really center the community. So I'm hoping that maybe the GAs could tell us about or share one or two resources from their work with the community and that community-centered approach that they have been able to successfully use in creating a lesson plan, and maybe describe how the community engagement led to co-creation for a lesson plan or a resource.
So I can keep going.
Yeah.
So we are, as Dr. Peck-Bartle described earlier, we are developing curriculum that uses place-based learning. And I've taken and incorporated, for instance, pictures of Rose Hill Cemetery as starting points into lesson plans that launch into the broader topics related to the standards. I've also used documents that were retrieved from the local Tarpon Springs Historical Society. For an example, in a lesson plan that I just created that talked about the effects of segregation in Tarpon Springs, I included an application from the Tarpon Springs Ku Klux Klan. I've also incorporated oral histories into the lesson plans. So we conduct these oral histories. I conduct them with Dr. Armstrong, and a powerful way that I bring them back into kind of like the summarizing of the lesson is I include an excerpt of the oral history. And I've actually got one right here that I can read real quick. This was one that I conducted a few weeks ago. I'm reading now. He said, if you went on US 19 and Tampa Road, that area used to be orange groves. You could drive down that road and they would be burning crosses right there in the orange groves off the road. So when we played youth football and we were coming back from a game, my coaches used to tell us to duck because back then you could ride in the back of a truck. We would be in the back of a truck and our coach would tell us to duck because the Ku Klux Klan was out having a meeting. And that is in the end of a lesson on segregation and kind of the activeness of, for instance, the Klan in Tarpon Springs. So that's a couple examples of the community resources being incorporated into lesson plans.
Thank you, Andy. And I think that, for students, it's so important to hear the voices of the community in the lesson plans and their personal experience, and then being able to blend that with not just primary sources, but primary sources that are immediate and local. Every student who is in Hillsborough and Pinellas County school districts, as soon as you say US 19, they immediately know exactly where that is. They can visualize what the place looks like now, and the hauntings between what had taken place there and how that connects and serves as a memory for the community today. How, for my graduate assistants, how has current political conversations surrounding cemeteries and African American history impacted the way that you've navigated the way in which you approach the community, and the way in which you are developing curriculum? How have you had to navigate in this type of environment?
I don't want to hog, but I'll go again. Cassidy, you want to go after me?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so it's really difficult to write these lesson plans in a way that really captures the lived experience of community members, like I was describing earlier, without crossing what the Floridian political climate would consider the line to be, which is changing all the time, it seems. Now, I've had the privilege of meeting and getting to know some genuinely kind people who have shared their personal trauma from prejudice. My community members all recall avoiding the orange groves of Palm Harbor, like you just heard, because that's where the KKK burned crosses and held meetings. Some tell these kind of heartfelt stories of growing up in segregated schools and having the same school teacher that they all remember, who visited their home and knew their families, and they all remember the same events. Others tell these stories of integration, where they were bussed off for over an hour and adults threw rocks at the bus when it was at bus stops. Some have shared medical discrimination. For instance, I heard from a community member that a school nurse who left a high school, her alone as a high schooler in a clinic while she was having an asthma attack, she just walked out, turned off the lights. These are stories they're very intense, they're real, and they underline the complexity of growing up in the segregated South. Your turn, Cassidy.
Thank you so much. As I was saying earlier, with Whispering Souls, what is unique about the situation there is that the board members are mostly white, and almost none of them are local to the area. So while we have had the chance to speak with them, many of their stories don't go the same as someone who had been born and raised there. So that's why we're going to continue to work to gain those relationships with the African American community within Safety Harbor. But as Andy was saying earlier, I think what's important with incorporating these histories into lessons is really putting the agency onto the students rather than the teacher, and the teacher pointing the students in the right direction. One of the best things about using primary sources, using the oral histories, is that you provide the students with the opportunities to come to their own conclusions, rather than the teacher doing it.
I think that's great advice. So, Dr. Armstrong, would you mind sharing some of the challenges maybe that you have encountered working with, our graduate assistants and teachers, who are really trying to get their footing with this community-centered approach to African American history education and cemeteries?
Okay, sure, certainly. Well, while I have a group of experienced teachers, they had little to no experience in community-centered research, and some had little experience being in predominantly Black spaces. And so full transparency from me with the team about what could happen in the field was not an option. It was always, important, and it was not always pretty. So for me, that meant making sure that they were prepared for some of the worst case scenarios. For example, some participants may have frustrations with systemic or everyday racism as we ask them to explore with us their very personal lived experiences through
the kind of changes necessary.
periods, through their lived experience through periods such as Jim Crow and civil rights eras. But we may feel tension in the room, trauma or pain in one way or another. And many studies have shown that race conversations can feel like a personal attack to some white people, or in this case, our assistants, even though it's not directly about them at all. So the GAs could be questioned about why they are working on a project, about a very sensitive part of African-American history when they are white. So to make sure we are on task and that they are okay, I often ask them in one-on-one or in group meetings to reflect on their position. And actually, before we met with the community, they were given reflexive exercises so they can think about themselves and think about the questions that they might ask others by answering those same questions for themselves. We talk about their experiences, we talk about their feelings, we talk a lot. And many times I'm in the field with them. So they share things about, with me, the GAs share things with me about things that they notice in reflecting, such as their body language, how it might be received by the community participants, or they talk about fears of what it might feel like being in these uncomfortable spaces and how they tend to, what their plan is for overcoming them. And the most rewarding thing is the moments of growth that they often share with me, like, this really changed me, or this has me thinking about this. I never thought about this, or they have those aha moments. So I provide a significant amount of accelerated training for our curriculum developers on being reflexive, being a student in the community and not just a researcher. Learning their specific community's history is something that they have to do. They get exposure to academic literature on segregation, heritage, and marginalized communities, methods, and ethics. And I consistently challenge the GAs, and the community also consistently challenges the GAs. So these processes open them up to new ways of learning and teaching. And it's been a great experience watching all of us grow. So.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit maybe about the community challenges, right? And I think one of the really exciting things about this particular project is the entanglements that we have with so many different types of communities that we're working with, right? Going all the way from, cemetery communities and descendant communities, teacher and classroom communities, local, regional, state leaders and communities, and really very diverse grassroots organizations. And I'd like this question to be open for all, including Dr. Armstrong. Have you experienced challenges, pushback from communities as the team is navigating through this very different community-centered approach in curriculum development? And if so, what steps did you find were successful in helping you navigate some of these challenges?
So, any of the GAs, would you like to go first?
The only really noticeable pushback that I have been on the receiving end of is just their genuine concern over the political climate in Florida. When we were first starting to introduce ourselves, and we spoke about how one of our goals was writing curriculum, I did get well, how are you going to do that when certain people are trying very hard to make it not accessible in the classroom? And I just had to reassure them that, of course, I was not the expert in the community, but I was an expert in the standards, and I was going to do my best to do justice to their stories and the resources that they could provide me.
I would say that I also experienced the community vetting of sort, where with me being the one African American on the team, they wonder, why am I on the team and why there isn't any other African Americans on the team? So those are things that we had to explain. And how could they, if they don't have a background in Africana studies or in anthropology do these lesson plans justice. So basically, I am very transparent with the community about everything. I tell them what my assistant's strengths are, tell them what my strengths are, and I show them that consistently that I'm there to support. So instead of my GAs going out alone, most of the time, that is the reason that I'm with them. So if there's anywhere that they may slip or they may not catch something, I'm there to make sure that we grab that information and we make sure that we don't slip. And then we continue to debrief after every interview. So our interviews modify over time based on information that the community experts give us. And that makes them feel so comfortable that they usually end up telling us about who else they believe would love to talk to us, which has created a great snowball effect in building our sample.
Lisa covered pretty much everything that I was going to say. The only thing that I would add is one of the challenges that I've run into is communicating and kind of networking with, and first establishing contact with community members to do oral histories. Is if a lot of times we'll just be provided contact information and immediately they'll be like, "Who are you? Why are you? You know, what do you want?" And you know, like just last week, I had the greatest challenge. There was a man who was a former businessman, and I could kind of see it that he was asking me all kinds of questions like, what is this organization? What is Special Angels? What is the House Bill? Can you describe it to me? What is it again? And you know, for that, you just have to be prepared to always explain what the purpose of what you're doing is, and you know, have confidence in that purpose.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room for this project. Our inevitable entanglement with contemporary issues in Florida. So as most are aware, there has been much conversation surrounding the role of schools and teachers in the teaching of difficult history, particularly difficult history connected with race, ethnicity, and heritage, continued attacks towards educators and systems of education in the name of comfort have created an environment of fear and silence critical dialogues and exploration in the meaning of race or our entanglements with race and racial injustice. Dr. Peck Bartle, could you please tell the audience some ways you've navigated these challenges in Tallahassee to secure funding for this project and to overcome resistance towards including difficult histories in classrooms?
Yeah. You see how Dr. Armstrong throws the tough one over here? You see how she just did that? Sure. You know, and I have to say, yes, that it is definitely one thing to engage in this work in the field, right? And to create curricular materials for classrooms. It's an entirely different challenge to actually try and embed these resources into the classroom and to get them in front of teachers and students. And more importantly, you know, it's about equipping teachers with the tools that they need to navigate and engage students in these difficult conversations. And I really do feel that anthropology plays a really important role in providing teachers and students with the framework that is necessary to talk about race and ethnicity in meaningful ways. So I will say this, and I think that it is important to say, right? So House Bill 4815 received bipartisan support, and you know, a challenge, but something that is also a requirement is to create a space where communities and policymakers and legislators can come together and not just speak, right, but to be heard. And so for me, the shared human experience of the loss of a loved one and the grieving of the loss of a loved one, and that need to have space to remember the loss of a loved one, it creates a really powerful space for opening dialogue. So before conversations of race and ethnicity and difficult history can take place, you know, conversations addressing really what it means to be human and transcendental human experiences has to take place. So this is really what I'm focusing on when I'm in Tallahassee, right? When we're addressing bills and appropriations that's connected to African American cemeteries and difficult history. How can we allow and create a space where ears will open in order to genuinely listen before a defense is thrown up, to understand this shared human experience and to understand it intimately. And then let's bring in the difficult history. Let's bring in the topics that nobody wants to talk about. And let's figure out the ways that we can really equip teachers and students to have those conversations in meaningful ways.
So, Dr. Pegberto, how have these challenges impacted some of the expected outcomes of the project as it relates to education, preservation, and memorialization?
Yeah, so I'm gonna share something on the screen for you, and while I'm talking, feel free to play around with the QR code, but you'll want to make sure that you're muted because the music that is connected with this outcome will play. Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely, right? There has been an impact in the decisions that we make as curricular decision makers, and a challenge that all teachers are facing is how can we create these connections in a transformative way, right, to the past and to the present for our students. And when you're dealing with erasure, and we're not just talking about the erasure of physical cemeteries. Yes, obviously that's a part of it, but we're also talking about the intentional erasure of historic records, right? And the systemic silencing of community history. So it comes down to how do we create learning experiences that addresses difficult history, that connects history with the present and the past, and empower students really to actively participate in change for the future. And so we felt that this was really important to center community words, community experiences, and their perspectives. So what we turned to in order to navigate this and to be able to embed it in the classroom in the political climate that we have today, and also to address some of the challenges that you see with erased physical spaces like the sacred spaces of cemeteries, we turned really to technology and art to try and recreate erased cemeteries for student and community learning experiences. And we did this by partnering with, and I have to say, a fabulous company, Groove Jones, who specializes in augmented reality and virtual reality. And what you see on the screen, hopefully in front of you, is a trigger map, right? And so this is a resource that teachers can print for free, have access to on every student desk. And when you scan the QR code, it will take you into an augmented 3D learning experience centered on, in this case, particularly Zion Cemetery. We found, if you're playing around with it now while I'm talking, that if you hold your phone about, 18, 24 inches away from a flat surface, a very comfortable 45-degree angle, you'll be able to place this 3D cemetery on the surface and interact with it in that way. And this is just one component of a very comprehensive immersive experience that we're in the process of creating right now for erased places, and to place these erased cemeteries and the community in the center of the conversation. Now, this AR experience, if you're playing with it right now, is actually going to be connected to a full-blown web-based program. And that program will then take students into a deeper dive with oral histories and listening to the audio of descendant stories, of primary resources, of maps. And this is important because it also serves as a repository for the community of pulling together all of these different resources that are established in a meaningful way to pass on these stories and to pass on this knowledge, both in the classroom, but also in the community. So, our hope is that these immersive experiences will really blend learning with a critical examination, right, of race, of ethnicity, of systemic injustice, right, and its reflection through place and lived experiences. And so by centering the community and the place and the curriculum that we're building, approaching it through this virtual way, we're also able to address immediate community concerns. And one of the things that we have learned is that the communities are concerned about having the ability to remember and to memorialize now. And that can be very difficult. It can be very difficult when there's a lot of red tape, right? When there's land ownership issues, when there's limited funding. And so we wanted to take a look at, in addition to traditional curricular resources, how can we satisfy and help the community with what is their greatest desire, which is the ability to remember and reflect and memorialize in a meaningful way now. And this augmented and virtual reality kind of creates a space where we can work with the community to make that happen for them. So, well, we only have about 15 minutes left. This is what happens when you put a panel full of teachers together, right? We just go and go and go. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions now from the audience, and I will make sure real quick right here that I put our contact information up for you on the screen. You always can, reach out at any point in time with any additional questions or interests that you may have for furthering the conversation. Our contact information is there for you. Let me pop over and see in the Google Doc questions that may have come up, and then I can direct those. So one of the questions that came through, can we all speak to our personal history with Florida? Are we from the state? Are we new to Florida? How long have we been here? Lisa, I see you smiling. So you're a Florida gal. You start.
Yes, I'm a happy Floridian. I have been here for my entire life, and I'm not throwing my age out there, but I do believe that helps me to make connections very easily with the community. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to be able to make that connection, but it makes it easier because I'm familiar with a lot of the histories, and I've specialized in actually researching Florida histories as a part of my master's and dissertation, and in the Tampa Bay area. So I'm not an anthropologist that kind of goes off away. I study locally, and I'm pretty well known for that. So I think a lot of times that's what has helped me gain respect. They can find me and they can hear about me. But yes, I am a Floridian. And I think Cassidy is our only Floridian assistant, right?
Are you Floridian, Cassidy?
Yes, I have spent my entire life in Pinellas County.
I love it. Well, I'm the Floridian who came initially from Chicago, New York. So, I mean, that's like the rest of Florida. But I had been here all through undergraduate, graduate school, worked in the local school district for 17 some odd years. So I guess you can consider me a Floridian. It's a great question. Lisa, I think that this next question probably is best for you. The question asks if we've considered training community members to do oral history interviews for the project.
Actually, a part of what collaborative ethnography does, it is an exchange. It definitely is an exchange because we're here as long as we can afford to be here. So part of that is explaining every step of the process, why we are doing whatever method is we are doing, how it will be used, and in explaining the methods to them, it gives them the tools to not only do it themselves, but know who they can contact if they would like support in that research, because we do have the University of South Florida that can help them in many ways. There's St. Pete College in Pinellas County, and it teaches them to think about who they can contact for assistance. And I think even urban developers, there's so many different avenues you can look at approaching these histories. So yes, teaching the community is a big part of what we do. We learn from them and they learn from us as well.
Great, thank you, Lisa. The next question has to do with, the current political environment in Florida. Whether or not we have any worries or concerns that the given current involving political climate in the state, whether or not this curriculum might be pulled from school use. I can start with that. I think that in the time that I have spent in Tallahassee, both last year, this year, and kind of the way in which we see a pathway forward has really been framing the conversation of difficult histories and race and ethnicity in the classroom as really a human rights issue, right? I have found that there is more of an ability for people to open their ears and to genuinely listen if we are grounding this in the human experience, and then the violation of human rights, the lack of ability to know where your loved one is buried, right? Having that taken from you is something that everybody in Tallahassee is able to connect with. And it's very interesting in the way in which we communicate and the way in which the state communicates quite a bit about our project. They often find that the difficult history conversations coming from the cemeteries, and I don't know how else to say this, are true, right? That it's not ideological because it is connected to a physical place that at one point people could see, but there are primary sources and documents that support the existence of this place. And so the conversation has turned to, difficult histories with cemeteries are okay. It's not ideological because it's fact and it's true. And of course, we have in-depth conversations with the community about what are facts and what are truths and whose truths, and how do we make sure that we do justice to community truths in the classroom. Lisa, or if any of the days, because you are active teachers in the classroom, what concerns or fears do you have since you are in the classroom right now?
I do want to join on to that last question about it might being pulled from the classroom. And one of the things that I do in the community, aside from exploring methods with them, is they are very much aware that these lesson plans may never be taught. So we also create, with the data that we collect, we're able to create many resources beyond the lesson plans that the community can teach at a community level. And they understand that it may not be taught in the schools because historically, local histories haven't been taught there anyways. But now they have documents, they'll have resources, and they'll have archives and different things that they could, reference if they were wanting to teach. And you said the next question was for the GAs.
Well, and I think to add to you, Lisa, one of the things that we're also doing that is not so much the focus of this panel, but is a big part of House Bill 4815 is not just creating curricular materials for K-12 use, but making sure that we create learning experiences for community education. So if the political environment turns down the path where we are unable to embed this into the classrooms, we are able to very easily embed it into community structures of learning, whether it's through churches or community centers. However we can get the learning experiences into the community is something that we're actively working on as well. Would the GAs like to share?
I think the next question was what work was done with classroom teachers to prepare them to deliver the lessons. And I think our assistants can really explain how they incorporate that into the lesson plans, aside from the workshops that will be available to the district for teachers. But it kind of gives them guides and steps. And so anyone want to share how they have used that in their lesson plan?
So our lesson plans are very kind of meticulously designed to have step-by-step process and to be very thorough with how to use the resources and how to incorporate them into lesson plans. We were, as Dr. McBartle was saying, we are working on trying to create workshops to show teachers how to use these lesson plans, but I'm pretty confident with how my lesson plans have been designed that any teacher could take my lesson and they could read through it and they could use it as a script step by step to incorporate it into their classroom pretty easily.
And I will also say that there's still fears, and rightfully so from teachers and administrators in the local school district, even though this is part of a House bill that's supported by the Department of Education, because there's so much contradiction going on with what is valuable education and what is not, and all these arguments. We can understand a teacher's hesitancy or their will to survive. And I think even our assistants have that fear at times, like, how do you bridge the gap between paying your rent and creating very contentious content?
Yeah, the comment of it sounds a lot like what's going on in Virginia. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we were excited to spend the evening with you tonight, is because we understand and recognize that the challenges that we're facing here in Florida are the same challenges that so many other communities and teachers are facing all over the country. And we feel that it's important, right, that any challenges that we face, that we share with the community, because if we are pulling our resources together and sharing with each other ways in which we can move forward, I'm hopeful that will empower more communities and more teachers to feel like they are supported to incorporate this very important history into the classroom. Let's see, I'm reading from Rita. Recently, I've read that the potential curriculum restrictions are focused on the public school environment. If true, and introducing this curriculum does not take place, would this information be shared with the private school environment as an option? Absolutely. When we're doing our K through 12 lesson plans, everything that we're doing is connected to state standards. And those state standards are often incorporated into the materials that are being used by private schools. So we could always approach this through the private school lens. I have to say, and maybe it's just my own optimism, I feel confident that moving forward, we will be able to move this into the classroom. And I think one of the reasons why is because, again, we are really trying to create community-centered lesson plans. And there is a strong community demand and desire to have a greater say in what is taking place within education in Florida and within the classroom. And so we have very much kind of tapped into the community rights, so to speak, right? You have all of these different rights and the impact that those rights should have on what is being taught in the classroom. And so we agree with that. We agree that concerned members outside of classrooms should be more engaged and should be more involved in what is taking place within the classroom. But that also includes community members. And that can include community members who have difficult histories and short stories to share. That includes community members who are not necessarily represented in the textbook. And so we are very much pushing with the narrative of, yes, we agree with you. Let's bring in more voices from the community and let's have that approach to how our students learn and engage, because these lesson plans tell the story of our students, right? And their families and their history. And the students have expressed great interest in wanting to have more agency in what is taught in the classroom. So we are happy to do that for them. Right. Any other questions for us? Because I know we only have until I think 8 o'clock. And well, it was so wonderful to spend this past hour with everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time on a Tuesday night, in the middle of a work week, to come and to share this moment with us. Please, again, feel free to reach out to Dr. Armstrong and I with any other questions or ways that we might be able to further conversations. And we really, really appreciate you all.
Thank you so much.
Right.